It's no secret that Star Trek isn't what it used to be. After 3 reboot movies which were tolerated by fans with the assurance that they took place in an alternate timeline, and this wasn't the direction of the main line of Star Trek shows, we were subjected to Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard. Star Trek Discovery started off terribly. Fans hated it. Critics loved it, of course, but they always do. Picard started off quite well, but degenerated into an ending so juvenile that I didn't even bother finishing the last episode and stopped halfway through. So what has Star Trek lost? Well, in this video, we are going to examine the reasons why Star Trek is dying and how to fix it. So first up is Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry's idea of an optimistic view of the future and a humankind that had evolved beyond the crudeness of the 20th and 21st centuries. We often make the joke that no one in Star Trek listens to music created before the 1950s. They all listen to classical orchestral pieces. Maybe a few jazz numbers make an appearance if you're really pushing the boat out. And they are shocked by 20th and 21st century forms of music. You can see this in the movies where the crew go back in time to the 80s.
How many megatons? Do you mind stopping that damn noise? We're all bloody wetland. Let's rock and roll.
6.
It's like if someone from our time went back to the Dark Ages and saw how people lived, you'd think they were quite primitive and even crude. I think Bones puts it quite well in saying this.
It's a miracle these people ever got out of the 20th century.
Yet Star Trek Discovery breaks with this tradition and has the crew enjoying these backward, raucous, uncivilized forms of music. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't listen to contemporary music, but I'm just making a point. In Gene Roddenberry's universe that he thought up, that was the situation. It's an evolved humankind. They only listen to pure classical forms of music. They don't use money, and they don't even swear. Check out this scene from Star Trek IV when Kirk and Spock go back to the 80s.
Your use of language has altered since our arrival. It is currently laced with, shall I say, more colorful metaphors. Double dumbass on you, and so forth.
You mean the profanity?
Yes.
That's simply the way they talk here. Nobody pays any attention to you unless you swear every other word. You'll find it in all the literature of the period.
Swear words were not part of the vocabulary in the 23rd century, until Star Trek Discovery came along.
This is so fucking cool.
It is fucking cool.
Evolution's a fickle bitch, am I right? I'm going, get off my ass! Sir, get off my ass, sir!
So that is one way in which the vision of Gene Roddenberry is being trashed. No more enlightened humankind. But what about Starfleet itself and the actions of its officers? Well, in the first episode of Star Trek Discovery, we have Burnham engaging in a mutiny. And that basically starts a war. We have a whole storyline about Section 31, the darkest organization within Starfleet, threatening to kill other Starfleet officers.
Sir, Section 31 has a lock on Burnham and Spock as well.
Put them on.
Pike, disengage your transporter beam immediately.
I can't do that.
If one of us doesn't let go, Burnham and Spock will be ripped apart atom by atom. Is that what you want? Because that's exactly what's going to happen if you don't disengage your transporter beam.
We have Starfleet's use of synthetic life forms as slaves in Star Trek Picard.
Good morning, plastic people.
Good morning, Mr. Pincus.
Was it not confirmed that synthetic life forms do have human rights in the Star Trek Next Generation episode Measure of a Man, when Picard sticks up for Data during a Starfleet arbitration?
It is an extraordinary piece of engineering and programming. Yes, you have said that. Commander, you have devoted your life to the study of cybernetics in general.
Yes.
And Commander Data in particular.
Yes.
And now you propose to dismantle him.
Fast forward to Star Trek Picard, and oh yeah, it seems that policy has changed, I'm afraid. And then going back to Star Trek Discovery, when they arrive in the future in the 32nd century, they discover that Starfleet doesn't even exist anymore, and what's left of the Earth Defense Forces are not very welcoming.
Your ship and crew will undergo a mandatory inspection. Any evidence of piracy will be dealt with severely.
Piracy?
Whatever time period is depicted, it's a lot darker and less hopeful than what Gene Roddenberry envisaged. And that takes me to my next point about time periods. What you just saw a moment ago was the 32nd century. A lot of episodes of Discovery are in the 23rd century, and Star Trek Picard is set 20 years after Nemesis, so basically at the beginning or end, kind of the beginning of the 25th century, end of the 24th century. But actually most episodes of Star Trek where we got to in the prime timeline shows like Voyager, The Next Generation, it was kind of like the latter half of the 24th century. And it seems like the showrunners are right now skirting around the main Star Trek story, giving us episodes set in the past, or episodes set in the future, or in the case of Picard, an episode set in the future after a character's retirement, which kind of ensures that we hardly see anything of Starfleet. A lot of that show doesn't even take place in space, let alone on a Federation starship. And that's another point that they are missing. In Star Trek, the ship is kind of like the star of the show. The other characters, even the captain, are kind of like supporting roles. When I was a kid, I had the technical manuals, the blueprints, the models, everything. There was no shortage of beauty shots from the older movies as well. Just look at how Kirk stares in awe at the Enterprise when he first sees it in Star Trek The Motion Picture. There's literally a 4-minute sequence of just beauty shots from that movie. Look, it's still going! And we see a similar situation when they reveal the Enterprise E for the first time in First Contact with this beautiful flyby. But the ships in Star Trek Discovery are not really that aesthetically pleasing. Look, Discovery itself looks like a pizza cutter. And in Star Trek Picard, we don't even get to see a Starfleet ship as the main ship of the show. Instead, we get a ragtag team aboard a kind of Star Trek version of the Millennium Falcon with Imperial TIE fighters in pursuit. So when Riker turns up at the end of the series with a fleet of supposedly the most powerful ships the Federation has ever designed, my ears prick up. I want to see the successor to the Enterprise E. But alas, you really get to see nothing of these ships. It's obvious that they didn't spend very much time on the CGI models. They just designed something Enterprise E-ish, and they never show you a close-up. We will finally be getting a Star Trek show starring an Enterprise, the Enterprise, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which is currently in production, but it's the original Enterprise and it's starring Captain Pike. But the point is, they're kind of skirting around the storyline again, picking Captain Pike from way back in the past, who had appeared in the original pilot of Star Trek and then was kind of rebooted in the movies and Star Trek Discovery. But with Captain Pike, they're able to pretty much figure out whatever storylines they want without having to touch anything of the Prime Universe storyline, okay? Next Generation, Voyager, etc. So how can they fix it? How can they give the fans what they want? Well, let's first mention a couple of good things that they have improved upon with the newer Star Trek shows. First would be special effects, which, while some things look a little bit different, they are at least movie quality in most cases. Another thing would be telling the stories in serialized form rather than episodic. Now, all of the earlier Star Trek shows were episodic, okay? It would be a complete story contained within each episode. But now, Discovery and Star Trek Picard, they have story arcs that span the whole season, and it really is a lot better. It's a lot more exciting, it leaves you on the edge of your seat, and it leaves you wanting more after each episode. But the real big hole, the big elephant in the room, is the lack of a connection to Gene Roddenberry's vision. Also, the lack of familiar characters in lead roles in situations that we're familiar with, like on the bridge of a starship. And obviously, the lack of cool-looking ships in the show. When Riker says this in Star Trek Picard,
"Shields up! Perimeter scans to max!"
it sent shivers down my spine. I was imagining him on the bridge of his ship, the Titan, the one he goes off to command after Star Trek Nemesis. Not in a house on some planet that we don't even care about, but it got me thinking about how CBS could salvage the terrible mess they've made of Star Trek. Now, even though Patrick Stewart is getting a little bit too old for his role as Picard, there are still many actors from older Star Trek series such as The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, who are still very active and eager to participate. Some of them even had storylines after the series portrayed in novels and games, like Riker on the Titan. We know that Geordi LaForge captained a Galaxy-class starship, the USS Challenger, in the year 2390 from one episode of Star Trek Voyager. In the last episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, we see a future Worf who had returned to the Klingon Empire. Worf actor Michael Dorn has made many statements about being totally up for filming a Worf spin-off series. Then you have the Doctor and Tuvok from Voyager, as well as Deanna Troi from The Next Generation, all making cameos in the comedy sci-fi show The Orville. The point is, these actors are all still up for it, so here is what CBS should do. They should keep Discovery as some alternate universe show, maybe wind it down after season 4, and bring back all of the most famous characters from The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager for a kind of Star Trek All-Stars show. Think Marvel Cinematic Universe, where each character had their own movie and they all link up in the Avengers, of which there are like 4 movies. Each character could have several episodes within a series, so Captain Geordi on the Challenger. You could have Data in the form of B4 captaining the Enterprise E like he did in the comics Star Trek Countdown. You could have Worf on board a Klingon ship in the Klingon Empire, one of those green Klingon attack cruisers. Maybe Tom Paris is now captain of Voyager and Harry Kim is his first officer. And where's Benjamin Sisko? He must be doing something cool. You bring him back with the Defiant, and Janeway perhaps is the admiral that they all report to. And as the series progresses, all of the storylines meet up for some sort of epic battle of the millennium. It's got to be against some amazing super enemy, maybe like Species 8472 from Voyager. That would give it a cool like alien kind of vibe, a super enemy that even the Borg can't defeat. And maybe it culminates in a movie, or 4 movies like The Avengers. Guys, we know people love comebacks, especially when they think that they could never happen. When the original lineup of the rock band Guns N' Roses split up in, I think it was 1993, the band reformed with a new lineup, but people weren't really too enthusiastic about that. So when the original lineup got back together in 2016 for the Not in This Lifetime tour, and it was called that because they didn't think it could even happen in this lifetime, the band played 175 shows and raked in $500 million in ticket sales. Yeah, you heard that right, $500 million. But that's music, alright? That's not sci-fi. Well, when J.J. Abrams directed the first live-action Star Wars movie in a decade, a very similar thing happened. The movie featured the original characters Han Solo, Chewie, Luke, etc., all played by their original actors. The movie grossed $2 billion at the box office, and it wasn't even that good. And since you'd have all the original characters played by their original actors, you'd have to write the show in a way that honored Gene Roddenberry's vision, okay? An optimistic view of the future, an enlightened humankind, themes such as morality and human rights throughout, and obviously you'd want to see a load of old favorite starships like the Enterprise E and a few new, more advanced designs. That is what the fans long for. CBS, you have the opportunity of the century right now. If you were to wait 20 years, say, all of these actors will be out of their prime and you'll no longer be able to capture the essence of this once great show. Seriously, don't throw it away. And you'd make so much money. If you don't care about the fans, just think of the money. Alright guys, that is the episode today. Please subscribe if you're new. Leave your thoughts about all of this below. I'd love to hear what you think. Maybe you don't agree with what I said, maybe you do. Let's talk about it in the comments below, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.